Hello and welcome to this podcast. My name is Dawn and I have Stargard's disease, and this podcast is called Seeing Within. And I am registered severely visually impaired or blind, whichever way you'd like to call that. And today we have the most amazing woman who I have great respect for. We have Claire with us today. Welcome, Claire.
Hey, thanks for having me.
We seem to be in the same sort of virtual world, but never actual face-to-face together. So I'm so happy to have you with us today on Seeing Within. And you are the ambassador for the RNIB. How does that feel?
Yeah, it was just an absolute privilege to be asked to be one of their ambassadors. I've used them as a service for a long time, and I've worked with them for a long time as well. So to be an ambassador, I felt very honoured.
And I'm on your radio station usually about once a month, the happy hour. And how did that come about?
I can't really remember. I know the lovely Holly Took used to present the show with Paulina, the producer, and Holly works at the RNIB, and I think she got a new position, and it just meant she didn't really have time to do the recording, and they just reached out to me. I've built this relationship with them over the years, and they love my style of content, and they just thought that with my quick wit, and obviously because I'm hilarious, that I would be great on the radio show. So yeah, when they offered it, I thought, well, it's another bow to the arrow, as they say, another little skill to get under my belt. So why not?
I love being on your show and doing my little philosophy talk. You started to lose your vision. How long ago was that now?
So it started in 2000, and it was a sort of a slow progressive sight loss, but on the 1st of November 2017 I woke up and I'd pretty much lost all my sight.
I went out for a walk today with my weight cane, and I know what to do through my yoga journey, and I'm breathing, and this vulnerability just keeps coming up. What kind of advice would you give me?
Yeah, I think when you're in that position, Dawn, where my whole username came from that, the can see, can't see. You feel a bit of a fraud. You feel a bit of a fraud. And I think a lot of people misunderstand what sight loss actually means, because a lot of people are like, well, you either see nothing, or, oh, well, if you see something then you're just a little bit visually impaired, and it can be quite damaging to yourself. Yourself, if you're having a bad eye day, then you can't really do much, and you have to rely on gadgets and your mobility aids. But then there could be days where you're like, oh, actually no, I can cope today, and that's a really difficult position to be in. But those days where you can't cope and you need to use your visual aids, and you go outside and you feel quite vulnerable, it is probably one of the hardest things to overcome. I always say that being told I was going blind was easy in comparison to actually going out and about and using Rick the Stick. But it got to the stage for me where I had no choice but to use it, because I was just falling over things. Like one day someone was walking their dog, and it was on one of those extendable dog leads. It's quite a thin lead, and I didn't see it. They were one side of the path and the dog was the other, and I just went flying over it because I didn't see it. I fell down some steps coming out the bus because I didn't see them, and I nearly got hit by a car. And that was kind of a huge turning point for me, that I thought, for my own safety now, I have to use it. So it was either be vulnerable going out and about using this white cane, or be vulnerable and potentially, if that car had struck me, I may not even be here. And I think sometimes the harsh reality is the thing that makes us sort of put our big girl pants on and say, do you know what, I've just got to bite the bullet and use it.
Yeah, I mean, the thing with me is usually I've got a support worker with me, so I'm like on their arm, or and I'm being taken around by a support worker from our lovely Access to Work. So when I don't have the support worker or someone with me, then I'm out with the cane. But it's the most loveliest thing, isn't it? It's like, well, you don't look blind, and it's like, I always think, like, do they expect me to have like half of my breakfast over my face? Like, it's okay not to be okay some days.
Yeah. Yeah, I definitely think like that's a huge saying, and it is so true. Despite what people see online, I still have those days. I call them the I don't want to be blind days. I think your mental sort of well-being just depends on how you tackle those hard days where you have obstacles, where you do fall into a bush that, for me, it's like I have fallen into a bush, and previously, before, I would go into a bush by choice, and this time I didn't have that choice, and it's like, well, that sucks. But like I say, I think it's how you mentally prepare yourself for it and cope with it when it does happen, and it does take a long time. Like, time is a huge healer, and the more you sort of go through this journey, the more you do eventually accept it. I know a lot of people who are years into it and are like, I still can't accept this, I'm still angry, and that's okay. We all have moments like that, but it will get easier. And I always say, like, it gets easier the minute that you sort of do accept it.
So I have my yoga, and I have like my yoga practice and my meditation. And would you say that you have your cooking?
Yeah, I do. I absolutely love cooking. It's really bizarre because when I could see, I didn't know how to cook, and I actually taught myself how to cook whilst I was losing my sight. And then it just became a bit of an escapism for me, to shut the world off around you and just be in the kitchen on my own, making God knows what. And it becomes your kind of happy place. And I think that's the thing, is when you start losing your sight, you start thinking of all the things that you're not going to be able to do, all the things you once loved. Like, I've friends in the community who love doing arts and crafts, and they're like, oh, I'm not going to be able to do that. But I always think you can find a way. If you love something and you're really passionate about it and you still want to do it, you will find a way. Yes, there's going to be challenges and obstacles and everything else in between, but you will find your own way to adapt and redo that. And I definitely found that with cooking. And also, I still absolutely love going to concerts, even though they're not audio described yet. We're getting there
No.
with it. And it's something that I just thought, I'm not going to stop doing. I'm not going to lose that part of who I was. Sight loss changes you, but it doesn't have to change you completely.
People sort of say to me, how are you still out there teaching yoga, having 22 people in the room? And because I love it so much, and it's it's so good for my mental health, my well-being. And as you say, the same with your cooking and your work on the radio, and your amazing makeup.
There's definitely knack to it. Practice makes perfect is what I always say. But there's apps out there now that help you, and obviously AI, so you can always just take a quick picture of yourself and, like Be My Eyes or the Estee Lauder VMA app, or even put it into an AI and say, do I look okay, if you're really sort of unsure, if you've got no one sighted around you to ask you. But it's the confidence, isn't it? Like, for me, it does. If I go out looking like a clown and someone pulls me up on it, I'm like, oh, well, I'm blind, so it doesn't actually matter. People can see I've got a white cane, so they won't be going, oh my God, look at her. They'll just be like, oh, bless her. Which, you don't want the pity, but at the same time, it kind of gives you that excuse to look a bit ragged.
Yeah. Do you think that you've kind of got more confident since you've lost your vision?
In some areas, yes, but in others, no. I think you've got to start life over again in a new way, and you have to find the way that works for you. And it's all through trial and error. What may have worked for you last week might not work for you this week. And it's hard because your confidence can keep getting knocked. But I just think, like, perseverance and just the want to have a happy and fulfilled life is what keeps you going.
Obviously, I would have been doing the yoga and I would have been teaching retreats, but like being on the radio, having a conversation with you now, probably would have never happened if I didn't lose my vision and sort of reach out to try and do other things.
Yeah, it's I've definitely found when you go through something as painful as that, you can almost heal through reaching out and finding this community. There's a comfort in talking with somebody who understands exactly what you're going through. Our loved ones are there for us and can empathize and be a shoulder to cry on and give us a hug, but they will never fully understand what this feels like, whereas other people do, and you can kind of have that connection. And I found it really empowering, actually, that you can be in this community and just cheer each other on. Just, you've got this, you can do this, and just be there on the good days, the bad days, and just help each other, because it is such a minority community. There is a bigger presence now online, but back when I started, there wasn't much of a huge presence of blind people. There were lots of other minority communities, but the blind one was still quite sparse, and that's obviously down to the fact that certain apps aren't accessible, they're not compatible with screen readers and things like that. But as technology gets better, it opens up the world a bit more to those of us that need that assistive technology.
I was such a cheerleader to you when you did the catwalk. But I was like, I'm so proud of her. My husband thinks I'm like, it's just this weirdo. And it's as you said, it's like we've never met in person, but I was so like, look at her with her cane owning that catwalk. How did it feel for you?
Yeah, I get what you mean. Like, you don't meet these people, but you're there just cheering them on from the sidelines, because there is that element of proudness, even though you've never met, but you're just like, go and smash it. Like, everyone that's doing these things, they're representing our community, and the more of us that do it, the bigger the reach we get. But I mean, the fact that I was even asked to do that, I was just like, I'm not a model, I trip over my own shadow that I can't see. But I'm so pleased that I kind of stepped out of my comfort zone and that I took part and I did that, because I feel that's going to sort of show to younger people who are potentially going blind, losing their sight, or have been born that way, that actually there are no limits. If you want to be a catwalk model, you can. It doesn't matter now if you're blind. I mean, when I was a young kid, there was a massive stereotype for a model. You had to be 6 foot, you had to weigh like 5 stone, and you had to have the most amazing hair and poreless skin and everything else. There was, just your normal person would never have been able to walk the catwalk. But thankfully, the times have changed, and, they're a bit more with it now, and you have all sorts of people now walking the catwalk, and rightly so, because fashion isn't just for 6 foot skinny models with blonde hair and blue eyes. Fashion is for everyone.
As you say, it's that confidence that comes through. There is a little bit of some days that, as you were saying, there's some days where you sort of fake it till you make it, but also being able to reach out to the community and sort of saying, has anybody else felt this way? And, and sharing that, because a lot of people say, oh, but you're doing okay. Or they look to you and go, oh, Claire, you're doing okay. You're on the radio, you're a matchmaker now, and blah, blah, blah. But it's like, it's okay not to have them days where, you're having a bad day, or your eyes are playing up, or what you could do last week you're finding more difficult this week.
For me, I put myself out there online, and on my stories, I'm quite vulnerable. If I'm having a crappy day, I'm crying or stuttering, I'm not ashamed to not show that, because that is the reality of my life. That's something that I've always stayed true to doing this social media thing, is kind of what you see is what you get. And I get so many people sending me messages saying, you'll come on here with bed hair, no makeup, you've got food down your top or whatever. And they're like, you don't care. And it's like, because that's the real world. Like, it's not that I don't care. That's reality. So, gone are the days where I would sit there and put my makeup on before going online. I mean, that only lasted a couple of weeks, but that was more because of the trolling on my appearance. And then I thought, I don't care, because that's not real life. But it is difficult when you do put yourself out there and say that you're having a bad day, because you do get people being like, well, I'm blind and I would love to have what you've got. And, you shouldn't feel sad because you've got this or you did that. And it's like, I'd give all of this up to have my eyesight back and to go back to who I was, So it's very hard sometimes to project that, because you think, oh, you're going to really upset a lot of people. But I feel those people feel that way because they're still not accepting of what's happening to them, and they're not in a good headspace themselves. So I don't take it too personally. I just try to sort of communicate with them and be like, when you're in a good position, good things will kind of start happening for you. You've just got to kind of manage that and manage your mental health with it. But, like you said, doing radio interviews and all things like that, none of this would be happening if I hadn't have lost my sight. I always think there is always a silver lining somewhere, and this happens to be mine.
And it's happened for you because you reached out and you accepted it. And you've recently just got married.
So I got married in August, best day ever. But no, you're absolutely right. It's so easy for us to sit back and sort of wallow in self-pity. But by putting yourself out there, you're trying. I mean, even if you were completely an able-bodied person with everything you wanted, things don't just land on your lap. You still have to put yourself out there. You still have to work for things. You still have to let yourself be known. And it just so happens that in my situation that I'm like, okay, what can I do to make a difference to my situation? So at first it was from a completely selfish perspective, like, this world is not made for me. I need to start making it accessible, and I need to start speaking up and making a change. And it kind of then you grow that community and you find that there's more people out there who feel the same. And not just with blind people. I mean, there's huge disabled community out there. We're all fighting for this world to become more accessible for us all. And like I've said, the more of us that do it, the bigger the impact we will have. Completely forgotten my train of thought there now because of my stroke brain. But yeah, like you say, everything that happens in your life, and then you're like, oh, now on top of it, I'm blind. But you have a choice. And I always say to myself every morning, I wake up and I give myself 3 choices. I can either give up, I can give in, or I can give it my all. And I find that there is power in positivity, and whether people believe in manifestation or affirmations or whatever, just by me saying that to myself every day, I'm sitting there and I actually do think, okay, so what do I want to do? I want to give up. Do I want to give in? Am I going to refuse to give up? Am I going to refuse to give in? What am I going to do? And even on those bad days, I'm like, okay, I am going to give it my all today. And I'll lay on that sofa, binge watching Netflix, and I will give it my all in trying to demolish the biggest bag of sweets I can find.
In my belly.
Get in my belly.
And yeah. So your dating show you're on, I love this.
Yeah.
So you're a complete and utter matchmaker now. How are you finding it? Are you finding it fascinating?
So we've actually only done one show, and that was the pilot show that you would have seen on ITV, and it's called The Blind Matchmakers, where the 3 love experts are all blind. So there's myself, there's Jake Sawyer, who was his alter ego as Venetian blind, and then there's Joy as well. And then you have the datees and the daters, so essentially 2 different sets of contestants. And in that lineup, I think there were another 2 people who were blind, but you had a mixture of minority backgrounds and minority groups there, because everything you see on mainstream TV, Love Island as an example, you've got these guys going in with the most perfect 6-pack and these girls with these most amazing chests, and it's just not reality. We don't all look like that, and we don't all want someone like that. So when I was asked to take part, I was just like, do you know what? I absolutely will, because this is what reality TV needs to have a bit more of. I don't like using the term normal, but it's the only way I can describe it, is normal looking people. And there are people on the show with noticeable differences who might say, well, I'm not normal looking. But when you compare yourself to the extreme of these six packs, I would like to say, well, actually, I think you're more normal than what they are, because that's not achievable. You know,
Mm.
it's everyone one to their own. Like, I don't say, they have had somebody on Love Island who was registered, I think, visually impaired, but there was no noticeable difference. You didn't look at him and think, oh, he's walking around with a white cane, or oh, that person's wheeling around in a wheelchair. I know you've had the odd sort of person like with perhaps like a limb missing, or they've been partially deaf or something like that. But where there is something so visual that you could sit and see it, you don't have that. So to have that on this show, I was like, yeah, that's really cool. And then as the love experts, we sit in on their dates and give them feedback. So I guess you could say it's a bit of a combination of all the kind of love dating shows that are on your screens at the moment. They've kind of merged them all together and made this one show. And it was really, really fun to do. And it was great to meet other people and just sort of hear their stories as well, and sort of get to know other people and bring them into your community, because again, they struggle with their own disability. They don't know anything about yours, and vice versa.
It's a fascinating thing because, I totally agree with you. Me and you should do Race Across the World, see if we could get out the airport.
See, there was a lady who did do it who was visually impaired. I think she did the first season and she actually won it. But I don't think she was using her white cane. And this is huge, because you're missing out on that key representation on TV, although, TV is kind of dying now and mainstream media is social media, but you've still got an element of people that watch TV who don't use social media. And a lot of those people are actually blind because social media is not accessible, whereas your TV is probably more accessible, especially if you've used it for years. And, we know like platforms like Netflix are brilliant with audio description.
You being on the telly and doing cooking on This Morning, I think it was. It's about supporting each other. It can be so horrible out there, and we're supposed to support each other as women, as mothers, and really support that. And I think the visually impaired or the severely visually impaired, you're doing an amazing job, really are.
Thank you. There's a lot of us doing it, and I think it's just a wonderful little community that we have. And just to be able to know that you can open up your phone and there's going to always be somebody there that you can connect with and have a little chat with, whether they're in this country or a different country, and that's the beautiful thing about social media. I've connected with people all over the world who have all different kinds of visual impairments. I'm yet to find someone who has all of the same diseases that I have. But I'm hopeful that there is one out there. And it's nice as well, because people will come to you and say, oh, I live in this area. Do you know anyone in that area? And then you can reach out to that person and say, someone's asking if anyone lives in this area. And then you can put them in touch with each other, and then they can form little friendships. And, there's a couple of younger girls who are struggling with their sight loss, who I kind of unofficially mentor. And it's just lovely to be able to give that support back to the community when they've been so accepting of me to kind of not be a spokesperson, but one of the spokespeople, because there's quite a few of us with big platforms that are all, thriving to do and achieving the same kind of things. And I just think it's great. I really do.
If you could go back to the beginning and tell yourself one thing to help yourself, what would it be now? If you could go back and tell your younger self.
I would tell myself that it will all be okay, because it is. There's lots out there to help you, whether it be in a human person, in technology, in gadgets. It will be okay. You will get through this. You will come out the other side, and life can still be just as good and just as fulfilling. It'll just be in a very different way, but it will be okay.
Amazing. And one last question. How is your dog doing?
He is just the most delicious little thing ever. He's so cute. Yesterday, I was teaching him how to kiss me, and now he won't stop licking me. And I think he knows I'm blind, because when my husband or my daughter gets him to come to them and either lay down or sit, he lays by their feet. If I do it, he either sits or puts his paws on my feet, so I know he's there. So he's very, very clever. Very clever.
Thank you so much for coming on today and chatting to us, and for me to get to know you even more. So thank you so much.
No, thank you for having me. It was lovely. I'm glad we finally got to do it.
Please subscribe to this podcast, Seeing Within, and share with your friends and family members. This podcast is sponsored by Sarah Place Accountancy in Bury St Edmunds and produced by Anne Gould.